The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2563. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 2563, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to legacy, the first engrossment.
I recognize the author of the bill, the representative from Hennepin, Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House File 2563 is this year's legacy bill. In 2008, Minnesotans passed the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment. That goal was to protect our waters, to restore our habitat, to support our parks and trails, and to preserve our arts and cultural heritage. And this bill does just that. Looking across this floor, I can say that every single one of your districts is made better by the work funded in this bill. This bill allocates about $779 million in projects. Within the Outdoor Heritage Funds, there's $160 million for this fiscal year. We follow the recommendations of the Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council, about 47 projects, preserving 107,000 acres of wildlife habitat. The Council has heard the legislature and is focusing on restoring and enhancing habitat rather than acquiring more land. In fact, acres being restored and enhanced are up 70%, and acres being acquired with PILT are down about 80%. Within Article 2, the Clean Water Fund, there's about $304 million to clean up our waters. These are recommendations of the Clean Water Council and Governor. There are also 61 projects and programs being funded in this bill, much of which go from state agencies to local governments and conservation districts to do the work on the ground. In Article 3, there's Parks and Trails Fund, $130 million to strengthen our parks and trails system. The bill follows the long-standing 40-40-20 split for the state parks, metro parks, and greater Minnesota parks and trails. This year, we have about $500,000 in spending on a partnership between our parks agencies and the Wilderness Inquiry to get kids outside exploring our parks. In Article 4, finally, we have the arts and cultural heritage, about $180 million to celebrate our shared cultural history and support arts. The State Arts Board receives about its statutory 47%. We work to fund the core state agencies and organizations we traditionally have. We directed large amounts of new money to competitive grant programs rather than direct appropriations. And we also prioritize many of our member projects in these competitive grant pools from both sides of the aisles. And finally, I also want to thank our staff, both partisan and nonpartisan. Without them, this work can never really be done. So first, Janelle Taylor from House Research, Mary Davis from House Research, Brad Hagemeyer, House Fiscal, Amy Zipko, Mike Mozon, Chelsea Axelson, Chelsea Ray, Karina Nelson, Grace Johnson, and as well as our committee members for all their hard work, thoughtful conversations, and bipartisanship, including Vice Chairs Hussein, Skraba, and Co-Chair McDonald, Representative McDonald. And with that, Mr. Speaker, that is my introduction to the bill.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 2563.
Third reading. Discussion for the bill. I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Falconer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not on the committee, but I'm a big fan. So thank you for all the work that you did in bipartisan fashion to get this to the floor. I raised to place emphasis on clean water and public land stewardship, and I am in support of this legacy bill. It is one of these things that we get to discuss here and debate that literally affects each and every person in Minnesota and that enjoys overwhelming bipartisan support across the state. We all love our parks and trails, and we all need clean air and water. And in fact, Minnesotans love our outdoor heritage so much, we overwhelmingly voted to tax ourselves in order to fund these. The phrase "water is life" very much applies to the provisions within the Clean Water Fund portion of this bill. While the Trump-Musk-Vance regime, or whoever's in charge at the moment, while they're repealing the Clean Water Rule, also known as Waters of the United States, or WOTUS, and gutting the Clean Water Act, defanging the EPA and seemingly every regulation on the books and agency charged with protecting our clean waters. In Minnesota, at least, thanks to this bill, we can be proud that we are funding programs making sure our shared waters are safe for drinking, support wild rice, safe for fishing and swimming and other recreation activities. This bill supports our more than $13 billion yearly outdoor recreation-based industry, so lake resorts can welcome people, our outfitters and camps can get people into the wilderness, fishing charters can get people on Lake Superior, and so much more that is a part of our way of life in Minnesota. And for our public lands, while the Trump administration also redesignates the primary purpose of all federal lands, including the Superior National Forest, Grand Portage National Monument, even Voisers National Park, and the boundary waters themselves for mining and extraction. He's also designating the primary purposes for our 2 national forests for being clear-cut by logging for that single industry at the detriment of all else, recreation, habitat, hunting, grounds, conservation, everything else. But in Minnesota, through this legacy bill, we are choosing a balanced approach that protects our shared public lands for multi-purpose use, which, yes, can and should include logging and mining, but also prioritizes protecting our public lands for conservation and outdoors recreation as well. And yesterday, we just learned that the ramifications of the Trump-Musk chainsaw cuts to the Forest Service and USDA that caused the closure of
Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What order of business are we on?
Thank you. We're on the third reading for House File 2563. Representative Falconer.
Thank you. So I'll continue for what this does for Minnesota. While we just learned that yesterday that the ramifications of the chainsaw cuts to the Forest Service and USDA that caused the closure of 2 of the busiest Forest Service offices and issue boundary waters permits in Ely and Grand Marais, which causes chaos as the boundary waters permitting entry season is about to open. Minnesotans, as well as people across the country who travel to the boundary waters and spend their money in our state, will be scrambling to figure out how they're going to pick up their canoe trip permits, placing a burden on outfitting businesses to issue permits that take around a half hour each to process, to no financial gain to the outfitters themselves, and actually at the expense of lost staff, time, and productivity. But in Minnesota, thanks to this bill, I'm proud to say, we are working to keep our public lands protected, open, and accessible, which will be more important than ever while our federal public lands are being made inaccessible. Our state public lands and waters belong to all of us, everyone in this chamber, and everyone in Minnesota alike. They are our lands and waters. State parks, state regional trails, metro regional, and greater Minnesota regional parks.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
State your
I rise
point of
under
order.
Mason's.
State your point of order.
I rise under Mason's section 112, reading of papers. When papers or something printed have not been printed or presented to the House or the Committee for Action, a member does not have the right to read them once we've begun to and are being compelled to vote for them. We don't read scripts here on the floor. You can stand up and give a floor speech on your own.
Representative Falconer.
I'll continue with my speech, as many do, that happens to be written down so I don't miss points that I want to make. These are our public lands, and this bill protects them. Our state's parks, state and regional trails, metro regional and greater Minnesota regional parks, and other open natural spaces are getting funding they need through this bill to keep these cherished places protected, open, and accessible to all. So, to finish out, as POTUS destroys WOTUS, as Trump tries to turn our federal public lands into a toxic mine waste dump, as Trump denies access to the BWCA, causing chaos and permit delay, as the federal regime guts the Clean Water Act, we, for all of Minnesota, are making a pact that we stand by clean water and public lands for all Minnesotans. In the land of 10,000 lakes, which actually is officially 11,482, or over 22,000 lakes if we went by Wisconsin's standard of counting glorified drainage ponds as lakes. Anyway, our lakes and waters on state and regional parks and recreation areas and other state lands literally define our state. They define our way of life. They drive a significant portion of our economy and enrich all of our lives. I thank the committee for this bipartisan work on this bill and enthusiastically encourage you to vote green.
I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I have been debating whether I would be voting for this bill or not. I have given it consideration, And sometimes you vote for a bill because of what's in it, and sometimes you vote for a bill because of what's not in it or has been purposely excluded. Members, here in a few days, the 30th of April will be the 50th commemoration of the fall of Saigon, the ending of the Vietnam War. In this bill, in one section, there is a by-name request for one people group who were impacted by the war in Vietnam, but there are no other mentions of 3 other very important groups that were impacted by the war in Vietnam, who stood by our American servicemen and women and were amazingly helpful. Here's who are not in this bill: the Vietnamese, the Lao, and the Cambodian. And I brought a bill to the Legacy Committee asking that we commemorate them, and it devolved into a fairly hotly contested committee hearing. Representative McDonald called me later and thanked me, I think, sort of a sideways kind of way, for bringing the bill to committee. But members, these people group that I have spent time with as a member of the API board, they feel that they have been excluded. Now, I'm hopeful that there is a grant in here that is going to the Humanities Center that will be able to help these 3 very important people groups feel like they have been honored and recognized by the state of Minnesota. Not only did they stand up and stand beside the American servicemen in Vietnam in the war in Vietnam, but then they chose to relocate here to our state to invest themselves in our community, to become an important and active part of our state. And on the 50th anniversary of the ending of the Vietnam War, they have gotten nothing. And I am hopeful that the competitive grants that may come forward will give them something. But there are other times in this bill where one people group is mentioned on a number of different occasions. We should be applying things fairly and equally to the people who were impacted, the people who stood beside us, and the people who have invested in the state of Minnesota. And because of that exclusion, I am voting no. And I would encourage as many of you as can, if you feel importantly about this, that you should as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Momanyi-Hiltsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I rise today in strong support of House File 2563, a bill not only upholds our shared values, but defends the very soul of Minnesota. Of the 4 areas under the Legacy Committee charge, today I rise to speak specifically about the Arts and Culture Heritage Fund. This fund has done more than preserve our history. It has expanded access, elevated the voices of local creators, and made sure that from these smallest towns to the heart of the Twin Cities, Minnesotans see their stories reflected, honored, and celebrated. For me, this isn't just a policy. As an immigrant, I come to this country carrying not just my dreams, but my culture, my history, and my identity. I know what it feels like not to be unseen. I know what it means to wonder if there is a place for my story in the fabric of America. The arts and cultural institutions here in Minnesota say, I belong, you belong, we all belong. All of our stories matter. But today, that very foundation is under attack, and the Trump administration slashes funding to arts and culture. It's not just a budget adjustment, it's an attack on our identity as Minnesotans. Those cuts are not neutral, they are intentional. They seek to silence voices, erase histories, and send a dangerous message to our Black, Brown, immigrant, Indigenous, rural communities, and our LGBTQ+ family that our lived experiences, our culture, and our very existence are somehow expandable. When institutions like the Science Museum of Minnesota and the Walker Art Center loses federal funding, the impact is felt far beyond exhibit halls. It reaches into our classrooms, robs students of creative learning opportunities, and chokes off spaces where future leaders can find their voices. Those cuts dismantle the very soul of who we are as Minnesotans. And I refuse, and we must refuse to stay silent. Here in Minnesota, we know that arts aren't charity, they are a necessity. They spark empathy, they fuel innovation, they build bridges where others build walls. And they remind every Minnesotan, no matter their background, they are part of this story together. House File 2563 is our stance, is our shield, and it's our promise that we will not let partisan attacks define who gets to be chosen, seen, valued in this state. So let's be clear, Minnesota. Minnesota will not bow down to censorship. We will not surrender to cultural erasure. We will instead, we will invest, we will protect, we will fight for the creativity, the diversity, and heritage that make Minnesotans strong, and that's what this bill does. Lastly, I want to extend gratitude to Chair Vang and Chair McDonald for your leadership. In a season full of hard decisions, you led with courage, clarity, and conviction. You honored the values that brought all of us here, and even if we didn't get what we all wanted, we worked together to meet in the middle, honoring the will of the people that elected us to serve. I urge a green vote on House File 2563 because our future deserves nothing less, and we are stronger together. Thank you, Speaker.
I recognize the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heintzeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I have a few comments about today's bill. I wanted to point out a few things that I am glad to see are here from the Clean Water Council's recommendations. There's money for those that would like to continue to maybe check their well water and have testing made available. That's been something that has been included for many years, is included in this bill today on the floor. I think that's a great tool for folks that want to monitor their groundwater. There's also grants for counties and SWCDs to do the good work, the boots on the ground work to improve water quality around the state of Minnesota. I wanted to also mention my appreciation to our co-chairs, McDonald and Vang, for a number of things that aren't in the bill. The House language before us today does not include earmarks or direct appropriations like some previous bills have. And it's always better, in my opinion, to have a competitive process for those coming to look for resources, to work on environment, natural resource-related projects, and the Clean Water Council projects also very specifically, where there's that check and balance to confirm that these organizations are reputable and that taxpayer dollars are being elevated to their highest and best use. I think that because of our co-chair's leadership, changes have been made in the other body to reflect that integrity, and I wanted to make note of that today on the floor as we move this bill forward. So thank you, and I'll be voting green.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and member of the Legacy Committee that can't probably speak today. This legacy bill continues so many of the great things that we've been able to do with this bill in the past few years. Amazing projects in the water space. You know, every year making our water more swimmable, drinkable, and swimmable. And it's really quite exciting if you dig in and can see the projects that are able to be done with this money. In the outdoor heritage space, so much money is going to protecting, restoring, enhancing land all over the state of Minnesota, and that's for all of us. We can get out there and enjoy it, whether it's hunting or bird watching or just even helping preserve streams and clean water. So much of our state is, you know, interconnected in ways that we don't even know, like Minneapolis water and the east, you know, comes from up north. And so this bill does so much great work in that space and keeps it going. In the Parks and Trails area, which I deeply love, it, you know, there's some amazing work that's done all over every district. I was glad Chair Vang said everyone's district has stuff in this bill, and it's certainly in the Parks and Trails is just amazing work that we can be really proud of, and that work has kept going. In the arts and cultural space, there's great work all over the state, going to grant, whether bigger institutions all the way down to maybe a local potter that does work and is able to get a grant. But one of the things, given that we celebrated Mary Murphy this week, there's money in there for, which she was former chair, she started money for libraries. And there's some money in there, for, which the current chairs kept going, and money for county fairs. I don't know if you remember, that was pretty special where Mary got her first kiss. So, not that that's all important, but I think it's kind of sweet on the same week we're doing this. I just really want to give a hats off to the staff. The nonpartisan staff really do a good job, and the nonpartisan and the partisan on both sides of the aisle are top notch. But at the end of the day, I'm really proud as a former chair to thank Chair McDonald and Chair Vang for, you know, in this modern space to, you know, where we're at right now, to develop a good bill and keep up the good work that we can all be proud of for the state of Minnesota. So I'd say you better vote green.
I recognize the member from Roseau, Representative Burkel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to speak quickly on the Outdoor Heritage Fund part of the bill. Appreciated the time I've spent the last 2 years with Representative Lillie on the committee, and we'll miss him, but looking forward to Representative Vang's presence there as well. Also recognize Representative Heintzeman in his past service there. The council spends a lot of time vetting these bills in July through November, a lot of extra work, ranking those projects, vetting those projects. And by December, the council comes up with those recommendations, and that's what you see in this bill. Many hours spent by the council debating and reviewing every proposal, and no process is perfect, but this one's pretty darn good. You can find those projects, everything's online, watch those YouTube videos, but it'll tell you what was done, when it was done, how it was done, who did it, what the cost is, everything's really transparent. There's a whole list of those projects in the outdoor heritage portion of the bill. You can see those listed. I won't go into detail. Beyond that, as Representative Lillie just mentioned, the county fair grants, I think it's a great part of the bill. There's also a provision that I carried for Minnesota FFA that's in the bill for $250,000. Really good project recognizing their 100-year history and the importance of agriculture in our state. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask everyone to vote green if they can, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Hussein.
Good afternoon, and as the Vice Chair of Legacy Committee, I'm honored to stand in front of you today, an important step forward for Minnesota House File 2563. As the Minnesota House of Representatives, through the work of the Legacy and Finance Committee, we dedicated to preserving our state rich history, protecting our natural resources, investing in the cultural future of all Minnesotans. The advancement of Legacy Finance Committee. This bill reforms our commitment to safeguarding Minnesota lakes, rivers, park, and trail. Also, let's not forget supporting arts and cultural institutes that enrich our community. This bill ensures that every Minnesota, from urban neighborhood or the greater Minnesota, has access to this bill. Clean water, green space, cultural experience that reflect our diverse state of Minnesota. I wanted to extend my gratitude to thanks to our chair, Chair McDonald, and Chair Samantha Vang, for putting together a great bill that reflects throughout the state of Minnesota. They haven't left anyone behind. They try to do the best they can to listen to our committees and work together as a team. Your leadership, collaboration, inspired, made this process both productive and joyful. Let's not forget our staff for the nonpartisan, and both has done a great job. We could not have done anything without them. They made our job so easy, and we want to thank you for the great work that you have done. And also, the members from both sides. We debated thoughtfully, and we worked together as a team to get this beautiful bill that reflects and invests for the state of Minnesota. Let's continue this work with the same heart and energy for the rest of those bills. I will encourage all my colleagues for both sides to go vote for this bill green, because I think, and I'm sure, and I've seen it, both chairs have worked so hard to make sure that this bill is inclusive. Thanks for having me, and everybody please vote green.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Skraba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The legacy bill is a good bill. There's good in it, there's bad in it, so that makes it a good bill. What it does is it continues to do what the citizens of Minnesota voted for, to help natural resources and the culture and the arts. One of the things, just a couple that I want to speak on, like parks and trails, for me, there is never enough money for trails. You could put $1 billion in trails and I'll spend it on trails, because the more people are outside doing things, the better our society is, because we get to have hands-on with what we are trying to protect. So parks and trails could get more money and I'd be happy. Arts and culture, I come from a district that benefits a lot from this. We have a lot of arts and culture issues going on in northern Minnesota that people come up to visit, and it's an opportunity for everybody to see how different we really are, but how we are the same. So I truly support the arts and culture. The Clean Water Fund, need I say more? The federal government actually is helping us on the Clean Water Fund because it matches with our money that we put in. So we do work together, and we can make a difference in northern Minnesota with this money. And a really big issue, again, for me in the Clean Water Fund is that gets $16 million for PFA, the Public Finance Authority. Could be $16 billion for me, because I sit on capital investments and I see all the communities that come in looking to clean their water and wastewater. This is another pool for them to draw from, and it's still not enough. Our communities need more, so if we could use more, I would definitely support more. The outdoor heritage, I commend the group with working on more enhancements to the properties rather than purchasing them and getting them out of the tax rolls. So it works to an advantage for all of us. I'm a hunter. I like going to hunt on farmers' lands that allow us to hunt there. I also like public land, but I understand in down here, that ship sailed a long time ago. Where I'm from up north, it's all public and very little private. So I've learned how to use the enhancements that we're operating on to help wildlife and everything else in Minnesota. Other than that, I think this is a good bill. I appreciate all the working together. That is one of the, for me personally, one of the cool things that I get to experience at the Capitol is I sit on capital investments and legacy. And by the sheer who benefits from both are everybody. There's not it shouldn't be political, and it's very little political. It's, yeah,
Typical. I have an opportunity to watch this, to see it happen in front of me, and I'm like, I have no problem working across the aisle. They have no problem working with us. We get a lot of good legislation done communicating, and I look forward to working with everyone again. I think this is a great bill. I wish everyone would vote green. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Mr. Speaker, members, today is our legacy bill. I just want to speak to the taxpayer, actually. I think you had many members speak to the merits of the bill. We've crafted a very good bill. Matter of fact, our House version of the bill is so good. This is where you say, how good is it? How good is it? Thank you. That the Senate has adopted already some of our wise choices when it comes to our arts and culture section by not crafting a bill that had a plethora of earmarks. I think that's one thing as lawmakers that we got into a little bit of trouble the last few years of having too many earmarks into that section of the bill of arts and culture. So what we've done so wisely, thanks to Chair Vang and our committee members and our staff, is we put a pool of money together, over $17 million, and put it into the humanities section. You probably already read the bill, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But what this humanities will be responsible for is vetting all these projects, these important projects around the state that'll come to them and asking for funds. They'll merit-based. They'll have more than 10 minutes per hearing to hear a bill or an idea. They'll have ample time to look at the issue, look at the project, and award a grant if they deem it both constitutionally, first and foremost, and importantly and necessary. I think that's one of our achieving accomplishments that we had on the legacy bill. Now, I want to speak to the taxpayers. That's you out there watching TV if you are, and every one of us in the room that spends money. I was not a big advocate of the legacy bill to begin with. I've been here 15 years. Some of my members are tired of me saying this, but this has been my mantra. And Representative Lillie, thank you for listening again for the 10th time. In 2008, when this was on the ballot, I voted against it because if clean water was so important to Minnesota, then we wouldn't need to raise a tax to clean our water. What if the amendment had failed? Would we not have worked to get clean water? So I was not a fan of it. And I only voted once in my 14 years here for a legacy bill. And then Speaker Demuth asked me to be a chairman. So Speaker Demuth, you're not here right now, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a chair because I have observed the importance of what this money does to the state of Minnesota, especially when it comes to the clean water issues and the outdoor heritage of preserving our outdoor heritage, our lands, our environment, our resources, our habitats. These groups that put these together, the Parks and Trails, the Lessard Sams, the Clean Water, meet for a whole year. Many of them are volunteers, and they look at each and every project. Oftentimes they visit each and every project to deem it, is it necessary, is it important, is this a good use of taxpayers' dollars? And then they bring it to the legislature. And then we are to dissect it, to ask questions, and to either accept it or reject it. And as you see in the bill that I hope that you'll vote for today, we have adopted their policies because they did great work to making sure that each and every project, right, Representative Lillie, is very important and was merit-based, and they did their work and due diligence. So we thank you for that. I think a couple of things that we did that I think is very wise, Chair Vang, is that we put in there for all nonprofit groups that want to come to the Capitol and ask for money, that they disclose their 990s. We have witnessed throughout this last session that some of the 990s come back with some high numbers in nonprofit organizations. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but when you're asking for taxpayer dollars, it should be probably required, and it will be in this bill. Furthermore, we put in language, and I think you'll always appreciate this, that the arts and culture funds cannot be used for capital improvements and construction. This is arts and culture and our history of Minnesota. And we did see bill after bill after bill that was going to go used to construction, almost like a bonding bill. That is not constitutional. Therefore, we put that in the bill. So to the taxpayers, I just want to say, as a defender of your dollars, and I'm not self-righteous by any means, but because I've been an opponent of this and now an advocate, I have seen the great use of the taxpayer dollars when it comes to the parks and trails, which are so important, that bind us together as a peoples, and the clean water, which is necessary to sustain life. We got a responsibility to take care of water and to make sure that it's drinkable and safe for our children and grandchildren. And then the heritage, the outdoor heritage, Lessard Sams, they do some great work to make sure that our environment and our lands are protected so we can pass it on to the next generation. So I indeed am proud of this bill. It's not perfect. There's some people that were left out of the bill, unfortunately, but we have work to do. Representative Nash, we will fight for those folks that fought for us 50 years ago during the Vietnam War. That war is not over as far as fighting for their funding, for their recognition, and their contribution. You have my word. I'd like to thank, in closing then, that's always the best part of a speech when a politician speaks. In closing, I want to thank our nonpartisan staff, who without them, we could not do this job. As already been said by Chair Vang and Representative Hussein, Vice Chair, but I want to mention it again because it is worth mentioning at least 2 or 3 times. And that is Janelle Taylor, Brad Hagemeyer, and Mary Davis, our nonpartisan staff. They make sure that we don't fight in committee. And they did a great job of doing that. We didn't fight. We had a great committee, didn't we, Chair Vang? And then also on your staff, your side, you had Mike Moselon, Grace Johnson, and Chelsea Ray, researcher. They did a great job making sure that we were well informed before we took our vote. And then on the GOP side, I have my own Karina Nelson, who's my CLA and has taken so good care of me the last 4 months. I am very grateful to your good work and taking care of my constituents back home as well. And Chelsea Axelson, our researcher. She's a great researcher and makes sure I have all the information before I get up and speak publicly in a microphone. So thank you, Chelsea. And then Ms. Zipko, Amy Zipko, is a CA, and she is phenomenal. This is her 2nd term, I believe, on the committee. No, 3rd? 4th? 5th? 4th. Well, she's an expert in legacy, and I followed her advice and her expertise immensely. So for that, I am grateful. Chair Vang, you and I really worked well together. When I first was asked to chair, I first asked Speaker Demuth, well, is Representative Lillie going to be the chair? Because if he's going to be chair, I will volunteer to do it. And they said, no, they won't let him. He's done. He's an old has-been. But we have a really good one. No, I'm joking. He knows that. We have Chair Vang, and you and I worked very well together. And it shows what we can do in Minnesota to work bipartisan together to solve issues and problems and spend the people's money wisely. So Vice Chair Vang, or Chair Vang, Co-Chair Vang, thank you. Members, I hope that you'll vote green. If you don't, I understand, because I was there for 14 years. But I've seen the light. So members, I asked you to see the light. I asked you to see the green light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Hennepin, Representative Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Over the Easter legislative break, I got the opportunity to attend a conference in Los Angeles. In my conversation with my Lyft driver on the way to the hotel, we started talking about water rights and the issues LA is grappling with after the wildfires that we all have seen and heard on the news. She explained her love for LA and the great mountainscape that divides between the city, that brings this type of, quote, je ne sais quoi, unquote. But she's torn how no one should be drinking the water in LA. Where the wildfires has been at, it melted everything in its path, leaching chemicals and contaminants into the groundwater. She spends about $200 a month buying bottled water. Immediately, I'm thankful about the abundance of water we have here in Minnesota and the investments we make, especially here in the Legacy Amendment, to protect our groundwater and how much more we need to protect our precious resources. It is imperative that we preserve and restore even more of our waters and our habitats so we can improve the quality of life in Minnesota. And I will be remiss not to speak about Minnesota's cultural heritage. Representative Nash spoke about certain groups being excluded. in this bill. Well, members, no one is left out. Both sides agreed that a competitive grant process can be better than directly naming some communities. And so we created and maintained a pool of funding within the Minnesota Humanities Center, increased their funding than ever before, $17.5 million for the community identity and heritage grants that many of our BIPOC and small organizations can receive funding for. And through Legacy, I've gotten the opportunities to hear from many communities that make up the fabric of our state. And speaking from my own cultural heritage, this year marks 50 years since the first arrival of Hmong refugees. We have this saying in our people, because historically, or even now, we are a people with no actual country of our own. We say, "Nya luon du ya luo zu." "Nya luon du ya luo zu," and it means to be sheltered in another homeland is to become a part of that homeland. As Hmong people, we understand that immigrants and refugees who come to this country, we become a part of that country. We become stewards of our land, caring for our neighbors, and we build a place, a better place to serve our community. This year, we focus on making sure everyone benefits from these funds. There are projects being funded in this bill to protect your constituents' water, to improve habitat in your district, to build significant regional parks in your constituents that your constituents will enjoy, and support your community's arts and history. Members, please vote green.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the name of the members voting remotely.
Baker.
Go ahead, Dave.
Baker.
Dave, go ahead.
votes aye.
Baker votes aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski votes aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 115 ayes and 19 nays, the bill is passed as amended. Well, it's not amended, and its title is agreed to.